It's that time again. The annual conference of the American Society of Ag Consultants, otherwise known as ASAC, is going to be held in Fort Myers, Florida, this November 4th and 5th. Kurt Covington is one of 9 professionals who will address the conference. The other speakers who will cover a wide range of topics represent Florida Farm Bureau, Florida Citrus Commission, University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture, National Ag Law Center, Risk Mitigators and Advisors, Tyler Associates, as well as the lead economist for dairy at CoBank, and myself, Chrissy Wozniak from North American Ag. The day and a half of presentations will be followed by ag tours on Tuesday afternoon at Echo Farms, one of my favorite places here in Fort Myers. Attendees will experience farming at its most creative, with unique demonstrations, plants, and techniques being used to help farmers and urban gardeners in developing countries. A second tour at Echo will showcase simple technologies that can improve food, water, and shelter for millions of people. A third tour of a hydroponic grower is also being planned. For more information and to register, visit www.agconsultants.org. That's www.agconsultants.org. See you there. Today's Ag Spotlight episode is sponsored by Energrow. Energrow's oilseed pressing system helps farmers crush their feed costs. The easy way to make fresh, homegrown, high-quality meal, plus expeller pressed oil right on the farm. The fully automated turnkey Crush Pro is easy to set up and run 24/7. To learn more, go to energrow.ca. Hi, and welcome to the North American Ag Spotlight. I'm Chrissy Wozniak, and today's interview is with Jim Mundorf of lonesomelands.com. Jim is an author and artist, as well as a fifth-generation farmer, and he recently wrote an important article outlining what President Biden's proposed tax plan entails and its severe implications on the family farm. Welcome, Jim, and thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
First of all, can you give us a bit of background about yourself and what Lonesome Lands is?
Yep. So I'm in Southwest Iowa, I guess. My family farms. I grew up on a farm, and my dad fed cattle, and we farm corn, soybeans, and have a cow-calf herd. What I do, I guess my main source of income is the Drover House. The droverhouse.com is where I sell my artwork, which is mainly things I make out of longhorns. I go around, pick up Texas longhorns, build mounts and sculptures, and I've done furniture and different stuff like that.
So cool.
And so then I started Lonesome Lands. I actually went to school for the media. I was a journalism minor for a little while, and then I realized I didn't want to do that at all. I had an interest in it, but as far as like a career and having to work your way up and those kind of things, I decided I didn't want to do it. But I went ahead and graduated with a communication degree, and then now that that was 15 years ago or so, 16. More. But now that things have kind of made it easier for somebody like me just to start their own thing, I did that with Lonesome Lands. I started a couple of years ago. And the idea was just kind of to give my perspective, more of like an agriculture type perspective on the news and different news. And that's where it started. And then it kind of, as I got to researching more things and seeing some of the crazy things that are going on, it's kind of just went from there. So,
yeah, that's good. So in your article, you quote Farm Progress magazine, who said Biden has 2 features in his estate tax plan. One is unfortunate, but the other is disastrous for farmers. So can you tell us about what this proposed tax plan is?
Right. And so I guess what they were talking about is the unfortunate part of the tax plan is eliminating the stepped up basis. And what that does is, a stepped up basis takes the property your parents own and steps the value up to what it is worth when they die. So if you're inheriting something, it's showing that you're inheriting land that is at its current value. Without that, it would show you're inheriting land. So by eliminating stepped up basis, you're showing that you're inheriting land at what your parents bought it at. And then that would also show what it's currently valued at. And that difference, it would be shown from what I've read, as an income tax. And where that affects agriculture a lot is because in the last 25 to 30 years, the land prices have, went crazy pretty much. And so in my article, I described, kind of gave a roundabout idea of what land prices have done around here, which it went from around $900 an acre in the early 90s to, anywhere between $7,000 and $10,000 an acre now.
So that's a big chunk of money.
Right. And so these tax bills or proposals or whatever, and I doubt they really considered farmers or anyone else. They just want, it seems like with this, they just want to take in as much money as possible.
Right.
And so where it affects farmers, they consider people who have equity of millions of dollars wealthy. Well, farmers, do have that equity, but they're not making millions of dollars. So,
right. Yeah. Can you give us like an example of the way it happens now against how the proposed tax bill would be? Some numbers. I know you laid out a pretty good example in the article with
right. And how it happens now. So I researched what this proposal was. So I'm more almost informed on that, like as compared to how it happens now. But how I understand it is, you get your stepped up basis. So your land value is at what it is when you inherit it. So if your parents die, you get it at that value, and it shows you now have that land at that value, but it doesn't show you're gaining anything as far as an income. Without that, it's going to show you're gaining an income from what your parents paid for it to what it's valued at now. And that works. And a lot of examples I saw were like people inheriting stocks or bond, things, whatever your parents, like if your parents bought Apple stock in the 90s or 80s and you inherit it, you're going to end up paying a tax on what they paid for it compared to what it is now. I think the example I read was Tesla, which, that could just be a couple of years ago and you'd still have to pay a ton. But the difference in that and Biden's plan is by removing the stepped up basis, even if you sell it or if you keep it, I'll try to find that. There's a quote here. I kind of base this all off this article I found in Forbes where Robert Wood, who's a tax attorney, and he brought up the example of a small business that started from scratch and now is worth $20,000. And then he said that the person who inherits it would have to pay a 40% tax or 39.6% tax on the entire value, because when your parents started the business, they started from scratch. And so I took that example and just transferred it into agriculture. And what he says is, and a lot of people have brought this up, I saw someone talking about it and they said Farm Bureau had mentioned a tax exemption, but according to him, who's a tax attorney, says no amount of a state tax exemption would help you because this is a big income tax increase. And then the disastrous part would be Mr. Biden's proposal would tax an asset's unrealized appreciation at transfer, which means whether you keep it and don't sell it, or whether you sell it, you're still taxed that percentage. And since it would, according to him, it would be called an income tax, you would be charged the top income tax rate, which would be 39.6%.
Right. So we're talking millions of dollars potentially.
Right. My example was, I kind of rounded everything out and made it as easy as I could, just as one heir. But there's so many factors that go into agriculture and how many siblings and where you're at. And I focus, a lot of what I write is about the cattle industry because I have a lot of interest there, but I brought this to farming just because I feel like it's easier to understand with farming. And with cattle, there's so many more different factors as far as land ownership and how your operation's working. So I just felt like it was easier to talk about with farming, but it would affect all of agriculture. And so my example was, if you bought 1,000 acres or if your parents bought or inherited 1,000 acres in, the early 90s for $900 an acre, and they sold it when they died, that property is worth $8,000 an acre. And what they bought was 1,000 acres. When they die, that property is valued at $8 million. When they bought it, it would have been valued at 900,000. You have a difference of 7.1 million, and you would be taxed at the time of death. According to this, you would be taxed to 39.6% on $7.1 million, whether you kept it or sold it. And that would end up being 2.8 and some odd $1 million. You would have that tax bill at that time.
Right. So how are farmers going to pay for that? Really, they're
right.
his land, right?
Exactly. And I've had some comments. Well, you should be able to get a loan if you still own millions of dollars worth of land. You should be able to get a loan for 40% of it. Well, yeah, that's the case. I suppose maybe you could, but my point is you would end up selling. Maybe you wouldn't sell right away, but if a lot of people that are inheriting land are in their 50s or 60s because their parents are 75, 80. I think that's your typical lifespan. And so, you're 55 or 60 and you have to take out a loan for $2.8 million and you're farming, you're not going to have it paid off probably before you die. And so then your heirs, when you die, they have to pay a tax on how much that land appreciated. If you live another 15, 20 years, who knows where it'll be. And so they'll have to pay that stepped up basis, a tax on the basis. And then also, if there's multiple siblings, they have to buy, so if you have 3 kids and 2 of them want to sell, and you've got one heir that's has to buy out 2 kids plus take over dad's payments plus pay off the tax that you're going to owe. It's absolutely unsustainable.
Yeah, that's it. Wow. Well, I think so much is going to change in the next few months. Everyone needs to be definitely aware of what's going on and get prepared for that. And do you think there's anything that can be done? What do you think, farmers should be doing right now?
Yeah, and the main thing is just drawing attention to it. I would say, draw as much attention to it as you can. Of course, like elected officials their attention needs to be drawn, I would say. And so that was my goal. And really, it is just a proposal. People brought in, well, that's just a proposal, but it's like a lot of, and I've seen it in my lifetime for sure. If you look at Obamacare, when it passed, the famous quote was, "We don't know what's in it. We have to pass it to find out what's in it." And that's where even just a couple of months ago with the the COVID relief that passed, these people got these 5,000, the senators got 5,000 pages of this bill, and they were supposed to pass it the next day. And it seems like that's how things are going. If you really want something passed that you don't want the public aware of, you push it and you say it's got it, or you wait till the last second and then you say, well, the government's going to shut down if we don't do it. And so nobody knows what's in it. And so people don't start looking at what's in it and realize the ramifications. It's a lot easier to stop it before it gets passed than trying to pull it back after it's through. Because once it's through and the government starts bringing in all this money, they probably aren't going to want to give it back.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. So what, also kind of an aside, what do you think of the Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos farmland grab going on?
Yeah, it's hard to figure. I haven't really studied it a ton, but it's odd to me. If you do look at, they're business guys, and if you look at the land prices, what's happened in the past 20 years, there's not been a whole lot of investments as good as buying land. So, it is scary, especially considering, there's been a lot of talk of Ted Turner over the years. He's kind of a globalist kind of guy, and he's really involved with the United Nations. And what is going to happen to that land? Is he going to donate it to, could this be donated to who knows what when they die? So it's definitely, it's odd to me that he's doing that, and it's kind of been secretive, and it's all of a sudden, he wasn't on this list of landowners, Gates I'm talking about, until really recently. And and with his kind of views, he's a big investor in fake meat, which I've done a lot of. I've written a lot on, and which is kind of an anti-agriculture industry. And so it's definitely concerning. And Bezos, I think he's just started doing this recently, and he's up to, I think, the number 25 biggest farm landowner. So it's I don't know how those guys' brains work when they have that much money and how they can even rationalize stuff. So.
All I know is they don't do anything stupid.
Yeah,
so there's definitely a plan here. Well,
it always seems to pay off. I don't know if it does.
Right. Yeah, that's a better way to say it.
Yeah, once you have that kind of money, it's easy to make things work out for you, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I guess we just keep our eyes open and see where it goes, and bring definitely some awareness to what this bill is, and hopefully it gets rejected in this form, or somehow farm families.
Yeah, I mean, and this is really the preliminary, this is what his proposal was while he was campaigning. Yeah. People have just started going through it now. And so it's not even really a bill or anything else. And, it seems, I think people might look at this and be like, well, there's no way that's going to pass. Well, I mean, this is his proposal. This is what he campaigned on. So, I mean, it'd be a good idea to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, we live in COVID times. Now we know anything's possible.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the last year, how many things have you said there's no way that's going to happen, and then it happens? So.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, crazy. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me. There are definitely some big issues rising up lately, and I really appreciate your analysis. And thanks to everybody who's watching or listening. If you want more information, all in the show notes are all the links, and you can visit lonesomelands.com as well. The links will be there. So thanks so much.
Yep. Thank you.
The way we conduct business in agriculture has endured a drastic change. Our handshake industry has traditionally been face-to-face, but with the cancellation of in-person events and farm shows, everyone has had to adapt. From farms to manufacturers to service providers. With a dizzying array of marketing and digital business choices, you need to make the right decisions or risk not being seen at all. If you need advice or a customized plan for your business, don't hesitate to reach out to me at chrissywozniak.com or chrissy.info, because that's easier to spell, CHRISSY.info. Don't risk not pivoting your business. Find the path that will take you into the digital space and be seen by our industry.